Thursday, March 23rd. I'll call the meeting to order, and I will start with our land acknowledgement. March 23rd, 2023, we acknowledge that the sacred land in which Smiths Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We're also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. We're mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, and being mindful of generations to come. I've only just one remark today. Just wanted to thank the Smiths Falls Police Service. I'm not sure how many staff were there yesterday at the job fair, but great to have a presence. I think a great opportunity to connect with the community. I think a very successful job fair coordinated between our local employment agency On Track and the town. I was out there in the afternoon. There were hundreds of people, and to my understanding, most of the day was very busy. So thank you for your presence, and hopefully it helps lead some of our community members into policing, or in one way or another, I guess, right?
Yeah, it was. My understanding is it went very well. The deputy gave me a little briefing on it this morning, and said it was a great participation. And it is good, really. I think sometimes we're a smaller service, and so not just for our immediate community, but outlying areas, it's good for them to see that we do have a police service that offers a great employment opportunities. So it was good to be a part of it. If I can just add to your remarks, Chair Panko, as well, I just wanted to let everyone know we did, former Chair Karen Hallonen did come in for a visit and received her plaque of recognition for her years of service on the Police Service Board. She was very appreciative of the plaque, and thanks everyone. And I think she still misses being part of the board. She's been a great member, and certainly a good advisor to us as well. So it was good to be able to present that to her.
Absolutely, thank you. Okay, any additions to the agenda, Chief?
Yes, I do have a few items. Just under correspondence, we just have 6A. There was a correspondence that went out to the board just regarding some, I believe, upcoming meetings, zone meeting. I'd also like to add under 8C, just some grant updates under business arising. And under new business, 9A, our court security grant, and 9B, the Inspectorate of Policing inspections.
Okay.
Just some small items, but they won't take long, but just some updates.
Thank you. Okay. Ask for declaration of interest from any member of the board. Seeing none, we'll move consideration move in camera to cover a couple of items here. So Smiths Falls Police Service Board move in camera to discuss items pertaining to intimate financial or personal matters, or other matters that may be disclosed of such a nature, having regard for the circumstances, that the desirability of avoiding their disclosure and interest in the interest of any person affected or in the public interest outweighs the desirability of adhering to the principle that proceedings be open to the public in accordance with section 35 in brackets 4B of the Police Services Act. Ask for a motion to move in camera, please. Moved by Chris Babcock, second by Rob Dobson. All in favor? Thank you. We'll slide in camera here.
And we're back.
Okay, we're back live. We're in camera. We discussed, go back here. We discussed identifiable individuals, human resources, and staffing. And we want to add to our agenda item 9C, resolution to hire an officer to replace an officer who is leaving at the end of May. We'll deal with that, I guess, at 9C. Okay, Chief, correspondence. We've all received a few pieces of correspondence, and maybe if anyone wants to discuss the upcoming OAPSBs, whether the regional or the OAPSB meeting in Niagara Falls, I think at the end of May. Is there interest from any of the board members in attending either of these? Or we don't have to discuss it now, but we could always make sure people are aware the training and the opportunity is there.
Yeah, if you could perhaps an email to Stephanie and of interest, and we can make sure that people get registered for any of the meetings, upcoming meetings or conferences.
Okay, sounds good. I do plan on attending Brockville. I'm not sure about Niagara Falls yet, but if we are, we can plan a carpool down. Okay. Consideration of minutes from previous meeting. Motion to approve the minutes from the February 23rd meeting. Moved by Jen, seconded by Rob. All in favor? It's carried. Consideration, business arising from the previous meeting. Chief, you have grant updates? Sorry, let's go, I guess, with the budget update.
8A, yeah, 8A is just a 22 budget update. I don't have, there isn't anything for 23 yet. Obviously, we're not getting any budget monitoring yet. And I have been away, but there haven't been any issues so far with 23. 22 for the final budget, I have not heard anything. We haven't gotten a budget monitor for December yet. I mean, I've obviously looked at our budget for 22, and as I've indicated in past meetings, there aren't any issues with the 22 budget, and we should be ending with a surplus. I just don't have any final details. Obviously, there's been some changes at the town and the Treasury Department, and so I think they're working on trying to get the any end of year payables and receivables in through the budget, and to come up with some final numbers so that we can get at least a final number that would be unofficial, as it wouldn't be audited yet. So once I receive that, we'll have that posted for a meeting that we can at least review that prior to an audited budget.
Any questions? Thank you. Okay, so I guess a big item on the agenda, NG 911 update and resolution for grant funding.
Yes, and thanks, and everyone sees that we have Chief Cheeseborough on our meeting as well from the fire service, and as he's been a part of this as well with the getting the grant funding. So as everyone knows, the province committed last year $208 million over 3 years for funding for municipalities to go live with the updates for next generation 911 from the old what was called legacy 911. And the way that split has worked is so for the first year, which is actually 22-23, ending at the end of this month, the province provided $85 million to municipalities. That $85 million, it was fairly late in the game, and just in the new year, requested applications to apply for funding. It had everybody sort of scrambling, if you will, a lot of police services trying to see what they could do. Some services have had some larger services have been working and had some infrastructure in place. Many others have not. Some similar to ours have been looking at joining up with hosted solutions, and as I've indicated to our board, we're looking at being hosted through Owen Sound to host all the infrastructure and support. With that, there is certainly some hardware that we have to have on site. So we did do up an application. We did get some preliminary information, some preliminary cost figures through Owen Sound and through some vendors. The vendors, basically, you're looking at Bell and Commutel, which is part of Bell. So it's really, there's a couple of things. There's one, we really have to. We don't have a lot of choice in it's sort of a sole source situation in that there just really isn't. It's the equipment is very specific. There has been a lot of work done across the province to hone in on with Commutel and Bell on what equipment is required. Price wise, it is what it is. I mean, equipment, no different than computer chips for cars. Obviously, prices have gone up. Availability's become limited. However, so unfortunately, some vendors have certainly seen that the province is putting a lot of money on, and so there certainly aren't any deals to be had. So with that, we did put an application forward to the ministry. We were successful, as was the fire service. We actually got more money allocated than what we had originally put in for, which doesn't usually happen. Certainly a good thing to have happen. So we both the fire service and the police service received an allocation of $560,000 for our NG 911. So this put us in a good position in the sense that previously we thought, okay, well, we're going to be able to get things paid sort of for year one, and then hopefully access other funding opportunities in year 2 and 3, and continue to help subsidize, if you will, our costs. Year one funding has provided us the opportunity to buy and pay for all of our NG 911 needs, basically for the next 5 years. We had Owen Sound came for a site visit to the fire service and the police service this week to look to see what we have for infrastructure, how they would tie in, how those connections would be. Provided us a good document that I forwarded to the board with some information that sort of highlights where those needs are and how it's broken down. The costs are a little higher than we had originally anticipated. Having said that, obviously Owen Sound has had the same issues that everyone else has seen, in that vendors have certainly increased their costs. I think as this gets a little bit bigger, and with the province indicating in their funding allocation that they're paying for some IT resources and support resources, things of that nature, Owen Sound is making sure that they have enough resources and everything in place to be able to provide proper 24/7 support. We are still working with Owen Sound. The chief in Owen Sound's been away as well. The fire chief and myself are going to have a meeting with Chief Ambrose from Owen Sound next week to sort of finalize some of the cost figures. Right now, it's sitting. The document you saw for the 5 years was, I believe, about $436,000. So it's a 5-year contract that really provides all of the nuts and bolts. Really, they're the only things that, as you'll see in one section under call recording. So that would be our loggers that we would have to, which is computer server, if you will, that records all of our calls, our radio communications and everything, so that we're able to maintain, and it's all through the NG911. So that would be on top of that. We have quotations from suppliers, and they have provincial quotations as well. So we have access to that. So that would be added on to that. We are going to add on as well, given that the ministry has been is allowing IT resources. We're going to the fire chief and the police service we're going to allocate some of our IT resources so that we can and it would provide us an opportunity then to perhaps access some additional IT resources. Because it is going to be, as we move into NG911, especially in the early stages, there's certainly going to be likely some glitches and some IT requirements. So we want to make sure that we have enough resources here at this end. Lots of support at the other end with Owen Sound. We just need to make sure that we have IT here. So that's so we would add. We're going to add in a percentage for IT resources at this end. Our call loggers. We also have in the 23 budget, I had indicated I had put in as part of our IT in the operational side was an upgrade, and it's about $25,000, and that's to our CAD system, our computer automated dispatch. We're going to slide that over into this grant stream, because part of that CAD upgrade involves NG911, and so the province is allowing us to put that in. So it saves us a little bit out of our 23 budget to be able to put that in. At the end of the day, this funding I think puts us in a very good position. There'll still be year 2 and 3 of provincial funding. And there will be other, probably some more IT resources. There'll be perhaps some additional training that we'll be able to put in under the next 2 years of funding. But the year 1, I think, will really get us in a good position where we'll have both fire and police up to speed, connected with NG911. It won't start likely until early 24. So the contract, the 5 years wouldn't start ticking until then. So we still have time, and so it really almost makes virtually a 6 years that the municipality will be really free of any costs for NG911. The provinces also, as you may or may not know, many other provinces, they have legislation that tariffs cellular phone companies for 911, and so basically everybody pays a tariff on their phone bill for 911. The province is looking at moving that here as well. So the idea would be over the next couple of years, if that came into play, similar to what the other provinces do, a portion of that funding gets funneled back down to the municipalities to pay for their 911 systems and to continue to upgrades and those things. So that's so in the hope and the meetings that we have through the Ontario Chiefs at our end is that by the time we get through this next 5 or 6 years, the funding should be then coming from the province through the tariff system. So I think I know it's very short turnaround time for the grant funding. It does. I have to provide a high level letter to the ministry by tomorrow afternoon that just indicates in large how we're going to spend the money. So the letter would indicate the contract with Owen Sound, some of the other upfront, the call loggers that we have to purchase. There's a few other little hardware items, as well as some IT resources at our end that I would put in. So it'll be the closer part, I would think, of the 560,000 that we will spend. But we'll be in a good position. We won't be spending it. What'll happen is we'll put that letter. The letter will go to the ministry tomorrow. it'll obviously the spending, because of the provincial government fiscal year, is supposed to be spent by March 31st. Our anticipation is we'll get the agreement for the board to sign for on the police side, and council for the fire side, likely next week, once they receive our letter. That agreement would come in, we would sign the agreement, and then the province would through the Transfer Payment Ontario network, would transfer the funds, the 560,000 to police, 560,000 to fire, through the town. And although they want it spent by March 31st, the reporting cycle, we have to file a final report on our spending by July 31st. We've had meetings with the ministry on that, and in essence, they want it spent, if you will, by March 31st at their end, but as long as we have it off our books completely by July 31st. So it does give us a little bit of time to iron out the agreement with Owen Sound, any other, the other hardware items that I spoke of, and just sort of fine tuning exactly where the money, the exact numbers, if you will, and where that money's going to go. So we do have some time on that end. The downside is we have to get everything sort of signed off, if you will, by March 31st. So realizing that it's certainly difficult for everyone to digest. I know I've been on meetings for Next Generation 911 for several years now, because it's been coming for a long time. So it wasn't really a secret. How it was going to unfold, obviously, was anybody's guess. And then as we got closer, we certainly weren't expecting the way the funding was going to roll out, that we were going to be sort of put on the spot quite this way. Happy to say that we did have, we'd been working on the hosted solution with Owen Sound. And so it was really just a case of getting down how it was going to work, what the contract was going to look like, exactly what equipment or how that connection was going to come into play. So I think we're in a good position. I think I think it makes sense to move forward, because we certainly won't get this opportunity again. And the alternative, then, if we didn't get this funding, the second year and third year of funding is not going to be the same. It's not going to be exactly as a grant. They haven't really given us a clear indication of how it's going to work. There is going to be an application process. There will be funding available. I'm quite certain we'll be able to access further funding. But it's going to be something other than a grant, is all we're sort of told. So it's going to be some sort of allocation process, and there will be an application process as well.
Thanks, Chief. Before we open up for questions, maybe just because this is public, can you maybe explain it briefly what, we know we're obligated to go this route with regards to NG 911, but what NG 911 means to the public?
So in essence, and I'm certainly not an IT person, but it's basically taking us into where people would typically calling from a landline phone, if you will, on 911, and it provides information as to where that person is, who the subscriber is, and it's expanded somewhat, and it'll be clearer than with cell phones, but it'll also be text. So people would be able to text 911 if they weren't able to call. If somebody that wasn't able to speak, there'll be and then the next part of that as well is video. So people would be able to, using things such as FaceTime or iMessaging or things of that nature, would be able to contact 911. So it's bringing everything. So obviously there's a whole infrastructure that's required to be able to receive those through a 911 system, to be able to populate what who the person is, better locations, as far as better pinpointing of locations of people with mobile phones and through videoing or texting, And it's also all, again, it's all done through IP, moving away from the old analog phone systems, if you will. So moving into the, as it stands for next generation.
Thank you.
And it is, sorry, and just further to that, as you had mentioned, it is mandated. This isn't something that anyone, this is across the country, every police services and fire services. This is mandated everywhere, although they've moved the dates further and further back because through COVID, but we're going to get to where it's March 31st, 2025, and I know that sounds like a long ways away, but there's a lot involved, and part of the delay is you got to understand that all of fire services and police services across the province have to go through Bell, through an onboarding system to get in the queue to be able to go live on the NG 911. So it's not like everybody can wait till March 31st. So as soon as you're ready to go, you want to be in the queue, you want to flip that switch so that, because otherwise there's no extension. And if you don't get 911, you're not going to get any 911 calls. So we have to be compliant.
Thank you. I've got a few questions myself, but I'll turn to the board first for questions or comments. Okay, Jen, yeah, go ahead.
Just a comment. Congratulations on the grants. That's very exciting to see. Just one question, just out of curiosity, based on your meetings with all the Ontario chiefs and everything like that, like is Owen Sound going to be helping a number of services, or the majority of services? Like, what is the other police services doing?
There are some services are hosting their own, and those are mostly bigger services. I'd say places like Barrie, Kingston, some of those services are hosting their own solution. They have a little bit more resources internally, IT resources, and the ability to keep that infrastructure running. That we, to be blunt, we're a smaller service, and we just don't have that ability. It would be cost prohibitive. We would be spending a lot more. You'd have to have full-time additional IT people. You'd have to be in connection with full-time support all the time through third-party vendors. So there are a number of services or municipalities in our size area. Brockville, for one, is going with Owen Sound, or I guess I shouldn't say that for sure because I don't know that they've signed a contract yet, but that's places like Brockville, Hawkesbury with their fire services. There's a number of services even just around here that are looking at that, and across the province. Owen Sound has been in the business. They do some dispatching for fire services and police services around the province. So they have a lot of resources behind them. They've sort of built that infrastructure. So they were in a better position to build the infrastructure. They had to build it quicker for their NG 911 because of the other contracts that they already had.
Thanks.
Yes, Councillor McGuire.
Thanks. Is my microphone working okay?
You're good.
Awesome. I'm wondering where and how is the data stored that's associated with the text message, I guess the back and forth that'll happen? So
that's all done now. Obviously the IT is a little bit out of my league, but it's all done now. I know it's all done. There's servers. They'll have servers that are dedicated for us. They'll have big server systems. We'll have servers here. We'll also have our call loggers, what they're called a logger, which records, and they're IP based as well. So they'll store. So when we need, if we have to bring back a 911 text, if you will, or a 911 video or a 911 call, we're able to get that. We do that now with our current 911. We download the calls and they're used for court purposes.
Great, thanks.
Chief, a few questions I got myself, and I guess so. For clarity, so there's two pieces to this. I guess one, we need to, I guess, sign a contract with the province if we wish to accept the grant. And secondly, it's a matter of lining up the IT services to support NG 911. But I guess for clarity, then Owen Sound will not be doing call answering and dispatch. That still is going to be done locally for both fire and police, obviously.
Yes.
And there's I guess a capital. We have to upgrade our equipment locally. So all of the there's a capital cost of that. So do you have an estimate of what the cost will be? So all that 560, how much of that's going to be going towards upgrading the equipment at our police service?
For on the police side, and I know the fire chief will be providing his numbers to council, and they'd be similar. The call loggers for one, I believe at our end are somewhere in the neighborhood of about $60,000 that we would be that would go towards those call loggers. There are some what they call routers, switches that are involved in that as well. This which is probably about and I'm just going to use a round number of $10,000 to $20,000, and then we'll also use and I'm going to take probably somewhere between 0.3 and 0.5 of an FTE, a full-time equivalent for IT resources to provide some more dedicated IT resources as we move forward. So and our IT, both fire and police have spent quite a bit of time in the last bit. So we're eligible to put some of that in the funding that expires March 31st, and in year 2 and year 3 we'll continue to apply for and look to get IT resources here, so that at our end, because obviously and as you can see with the Owen Sound document, they're providing support through their own IT. They've got full-time IT that'll be 24/7 support. There's also some of the vendors that are supporting the equipment, the servers and so on that provide support, and there's fees to that that are built into the Owen Sound contract. So all the support will be provided. Really, most of the infrastructure in this day and age, quite frankly, it's probably 90% of it will be hosted on the Owen Sound side of things. The site visit was to make sure, obviously, so that's where we have our call loggers and some of those switches and routers, so that everything's coming in to Smith Falls Police and Smith Falls Fire, but it's just routed through Owen Sound's infrastructure, and and obviously the cost gets better for them to have more infrastructure there and dealing with more police and fire services. It makes it more cost effective than each fire service or police service hosting their own equipment, having their own IT resources, having their own support contracts with vendors. So this is where it's made it certainly more cost effective. And at the end of the day, they've been in the business and really have the expertise that there's going to be quite a learning curve to this, and I think they've got a much better handle on it.
So I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, the grant it's great to receive. It's unfortunate it comes with such a tight timeline, which takes us outside of our normal procurement process. For one, even for capital, we would have to, I guess, single source.
Yeah.
And then as a service provider, Owen Sound is there to help. But are there other service provider options across the province? I guess, as you mentioned, larger services are essentially will adapt and do what they have to do to hire their own staff to look after their own systems. But are there other options besides Owen Sound? And again, I know when the numbers first came out, I think it was estimated it was going to be about 150,000 for a 5-year contract. Now we're 436 for a 5-year contract, so it's really tripled. And I mean, I recognize it's provincial money, but ultimately there's, I guess, one taxpayer, each and every one of us, whether we're paying property taxes or income taxes.
Yeah, and now a lot of that, I think as it's rolled out from from the previous estimate to now, it's they've certainly, and obviously because they're well, partially because the vendors have certainly got word that the province is handing out money, so that certainly hasn't made it any easier to get the infrastructure that we need. And having said that, again, as I said, sort of the reason behind the sole sourcing is really there aren't, this isn't something that you're, going to to the source and buying equipment, or you can there aren't a lot of suppliers out there for this equipment, and keeping in mind, because it has to be all compliant, and again, that part of it is sort of out of my realm of expertise, but as far as what the requirements are of this equipment becomes more and more specific to NG 911, and so we're sort of stuck with those costs. Owen Sound, I think they've, in fairness to them as well, they've obviously recognized there's provincial money, but I think they don't want to leave themselves short, thinking with IT resources and expertise at their end, and making sure that that they, in committing to contracts, while the money is there from the province, to make sure that they have sufficient support for all the services, so that it's, all of a sudden you don't find yourself in a position where, we'll get to you tomorrow.
So the contract with Owen Sound, is that a fixed price for the 5 years, or is it based on, is there an opportunity for simply cost recovery? I mean, if they sign up, I don't know if this is based on them having 4 services sign up. If they had 10, is there economies of scale here that could apply? And I guess, and second to that, maybe Chief Cheese probably chime in as well, from the standpoint that what if, do we have a better value if we have police and fire both committing to this as well?
Yeah, and we're going to have that conversation with Chief Ambrose and Owen Sound next week. Obviously, those are the numbers that he's provided at this point, and I'm going to say they're based on what he has today for contracts and how he's dividing that up. We're gonna have that conversation, obviously, to try to get a little bit more explanation, and perhaps and even an early conversation. I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but I think there may be some opportunities that those costs could be honed down a little bit. I don't want to commit to anything yet, but the conversations that I've had with Chief Ambrose were very positive. He's obviously at his end wants to make sure that he's got all his bases covered, that he's, that the city of Owen Sound isn't eating costs for other municipalities. So I think he's certainly making sure that he's well covered. And I think as time goes on, and perhaps as we get through the contract process and get that signed up, and then perhaps there'll be, the conversation would also be if they were to sign up 5 more municipalities in the next 6 months, that would be, some of that cost would come down. Keeping in mind that obviously as well, the more services that sign up to be hosted through Owen Sound, is going to increase their IT requirements. It's going to increase their infrastructure requirements and their support with third-party companies. So some of those costs go up as they get more services. But hopefully some of their back end support, or IT or full-time support, would come down a little bit.
Okay, and just so this came to council, of course, for the fire service on Monday. Council passed a bylaw to accept the transfer payment from the province and to purchase necessary equipment. And then we deferred a decision on a service agreement, understanding this is still fluid as of Monday. And so Chief Cheeseborough, I assume it's coming back to council next week at committee of the whole, but is there comments you want to make regarding sort of where the fire service is leaning right now?
Well, we're kind of, thank you, Your Worship. We're kind of in a bind, as the chief has indicated. The province has made the timelines so strict and tight we don't have an ability to start seeking alternative situations. Had we been informed 2 months ago, 3 months ago, or 4 months ago that the cost was going to be $436,000, there might have been an opportunity to take a look at surrounding municipalities who are in similar position. You know, Hawkesbury, Gananoque, Brockville, whoever, Cornwall, and see, because the original plan at the start prior to the Owen Sound was a group of 5 municipalities looking to go together. And then that broke down where Kingston chose to go on their own. And the group of 5 split apart. So now with the province announcing the funding on the 28th of November and issuing a letter on March the 3rd saying, here's what you have, you've got 28 days to spend it. It's made our ability to commit to another type of communication or hosting solution outside of Owen Sound. One of the things certainly we're concerned about, and council had raised the issue, is giving Owen Sound $872,000 to sit in their bank for 20 months. There's got to be a value in that for the municipality. I know it's grant money, but they're benefiting from the grant money where we're not benefiting from the grant money. At the same opportunity, if that interest that they're accruing over 20 months would reduce the amount of our 5-year agreement, or in fact extend that 5-year agreement to a 6-year agreement or a 7-year agreement, as the chief had indicated, rounds 2 and 3, the methodology is substantially different. This one, there is no methodology for the first round. They just took the $80 million, looked at the number of applications, said, here you go. Smith Falls was considered a high risk. Therefore, we got almost double what we were asking for. Just as a smaller town and organization, they increased that funding. I'm in the same mindset that when you get the grant money, you don't want to give a dollar back just because you're not going to get another opportunity, or your opportunities are going to be limited. But by the same token, I'm deeply concerned that knowing that we're under the gun, we're being taken advantage of. So I want to ensure that the value that we're getting either from Owen Sound is going to be worth $436,000, and that if there is opportunities to adjust that, then so be it. For our second round, we're going to have a substantial application going in just for security of a backup location, for the update of our current location, and some other items. And our logger is probably going to come in at $80,000 or $90,000 just because we dispatch for 14 departments. So, when we look at it all, it's great that Owen Sound is going to do that. But I've got to be able to report to yourself and the rest of the members of council that I'm quite confident in the service level that we're receiving for the money that we're paying, and to ensure that we're protected, whether it's through IT support, whether it's through equipment support, whether it's through spare equipment support. And certainly if we didn't go with Owen Sound, their costs are going to be their costs. So if we take, as you indicated, Hawkesbury, Smith Falls times 2, and whatever other agency, they're going to be receiving well over $1 million sitting in an account for 20 months. And that's a concerning part that was raised by council.
Okay, thanks, Chief. Any other questions or comments from members of the board? So the way I guess I see it at this stage, Chief, you had circulated, I think, an agreement with the province. We need a bylaw, or I guess I assume it's still a bylaw.
Resolution.
To enter into the agreement. And I don't know if you have, you or Stephanie have something drafted there. I have one that was drafted by our clerk for Monday night. I can forward that as we speak.
Yeah, that might be good. Just and again, because I know the fire chief and myself spoke as well, and I think the resolution would be similar to what was done at council. Would be obviously to agree to accept the grant, the 560,000, and then the second part to that, obviously to enter into an agreement with the province to agree to the grant funding, to sole source, if you will, because as I said, for some of the hardware, as well as with the contract with Owen Sound, and then ultimately pending, and that's where we can the resolution could be worded with pending further discussions with Owen Sound for the contract part with Owen Sound. I think certainly we would come back to council to the board with further information on the agreement with Owen Sound. As I indicated before, I really I don't feel that Owen Sound is taking advantage, quite frankly. I think they've as we've indicated, there is a lot of fluid to NG 911, and obviously, yes, as everyone, including ourselves, are wanting to take full advantage of the funding, because after these next 2 years afterwards of funding, hopefully it's then moved through tariffs with the cell phone providers. But we certainly want to have at least all our infrastructure and everything up front. Owen Sound is making sure they're doing the same thing so that they're not eating any costs as much as and as I said, the chief in Owen Sound is committed to me that if to anything that they can do to assist in reducing costs or making, they're going to obviously do a little bit more fine tuning in their numbers. They're in the same boat as we are. You're trying to get numbers out there to a number of services to take advantage of the funding, and they certainly don't want to underestimate at this point in time. So I think, and then as we move forward, we'll certainly ask the right questions on some of the costs. We'll get more detail on some of the costs. And then we'll make our decision from there. As I said, places like Toronto and Ottawa, and even as smaller services that are still larger, Kingston, and Barrie, and some of those services have chose to host their own. They're in the millions of dollars to do that with full-time IT teams and so on. There hasn't been any indication in answer. I think the question came up a little earlier that was other opportunities. Owen Sound has been in the business of hosting dispatch for fire and police services around the province for a number of years. So they're in that position to do that. Most other services just haven't chosen to go that route because of the additional resources that you need, even just space wise. If you take a place, for instance, a place like Kingston, if they're gonna start hosting other police services, it means entire other rooms, maybe 2 or 3 other IT people and so on, and then there's and then they take on the liabilities as well. Owen Sound has been doing that for a number of years, so they're in the business. So that's why it makes sense with Owen Sound. That's why, and that's why they've chosen to do this, is because it's just an extension of what they're already doing.
Well, thank you. And I think it's just that those unfortunate factors that vendors probably are excited about the provincial funding coming down to support this in a short timeline. And
absolutely.
Anyway, so I guess from an understanding, NG 911 is to be in place, you said March 31st, 2025. Would we make our contract effective March 31st, 2025 or January 1st, 2025 in order to maximize the benefit of this grant funding for a 5-year service from the date NG 911 becomes live across the province?
No, we'll be more or less at the mercy of Bell with our onboarding. So when we've in fact, the fire chief, the CAO Morris, and myself have signed the document with Bell, and that's just sort of an agreement document with Bell that you'll be prepared to switch over to the NG 911 platform. Once you sign that, then you're in the queue. So it could be as soon as this coming fall, because there's so many services in the queue. Basically, Bell tells you when you're ready to go. So that would be a bit fluid. So I would suggest it certainly would not be anything before this coming fall. In all likelihood, I would think it would be early 2024. It may be mid 2024. I don't want to go beyond that, because I just think the other side of it is there is a benefit aside from, yes, we would be starting our 5-year agreement with Owen Sound, but there is a benefit to getting this up and running and ironing out any bugs that there may be before we lose our legacy 911. If you were to, and that's why they're really trying to urge services to get this done sooner than later, is because come March 31st, 2025, legacy 911 drops off the planet, and you don't get 911 calls. So you can't wait till March 31st. It has to be up and running. It has to be tried, tested, and true. And and as I said, everyone's moving in the same direction. So you're literally talking about hundreds of fire services and police services moving over. So those all have to happen. And Bell has, unfortunately, their limited resources to accept this and basically flip the switch for everybody.
So I guess the effective date when Bell brings NG 911 live for our fire and police services, the date our contract becomes live with Owen Sound.
Yeah, and I'll confirm that with Chief Ambrose, but that's my understanding, is that in essence, some of the infrastructure at their end, and that's why, quite frankly, I don't think they're putting all that money just in the bank and collecting interest. They've already built a big part of their infrastructure, and they're going to add to their infrastructure, not knowing when Bell's going to say Smith Falls needs to flip the switch next month. So they have IT resources now and additional IT resources that they're paying for to get all this into place. So again, because I don't want to make it sound like, because I don't feel that Owen Sound is taking advantage. I think Owen Sound has done a lot of work in the last year. Quite frankly, they've been fighting because they had done a lot of work and spent upwards of $750,000 prior to the funding that they have not been able to get back, that they're trying to get back, because it didn't meet the requirements for the grant. So they've put a lot of resources forward and paid for those resources, and they're continuing to work with all of, not just Smith Falls, but all the other places to get them ready for their onboarding. And so there's a cost to that as well. So I really don't think all their money is sitting in the bank.
Well, I guess at this stage, we need, I guess, a few resolutions. And if that is first, let's review the will of the board here. So firstly, I guess, is there a desire and consensus that we will enter into an agreement with the province to accept the $560,000 grant? And see thumbs up or show of hands. Okay, so that's confirmed. Do we have consensus that we are willing to sole source the purchase of the equipment needed to support NG 911? I see thumbs, or I see some nodding heads. I'll make sure I can. Okay, we've got that. And finally, do we have consensus agreement that we will enter into a contract with the Owen Sound Police Service for the provision of IT services for NG 911? Thumbs up. I guess I gotta look around. Okay. So I'm not sure if Stephanie has drafted resolutions to that effect. I do have two of those in front of me. I guess essentially the ones that the council passed on Monday. So what I will do is I'll start with those two. And then perhaps Stephanie, if you're working on the third, with Owen Sound, we can deal with that right now. So I need a mover to, when it comes to the contract with the government, moved by Jen, seconded by Chris McGuire. The resolution to authorize an exemption, the resolution to authorize an execution of a transfer payment agreement to accept NG 911 transitional grant funding for the province of Ontario. This is, well, not we're doing a bylaw, so it's not receiving first. That a resolution to authorize the execution of a transfer payment agreement to accept NG 91 transitional grant funding from the province of Ontario be accepted and executed. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And then for the second one, I need a mover to sole source a purchase of equipment. Moved by Rob, seconded by Jen. A resolution to authorize an exemption from the procurement bylaw to permit the fire chief to sole source a purchase of necessary equipment for the next generation 911.
It'd be the police chief.
Okay, fine. Police chief. I said fire chief. Okay, sorry. In front of me. The fire chief say, no, I don't want, I've got my own problems. You know.
Just say that if the fire chief wants to take over the police side of the house.
Yeah. The resolution to authorize an exemption from the procurement bylaw to permit the police chief to sole source a purchase of necessary equipment for next generation 911. All in favor? Carried. And so we need a third resolution, and I'm hoping Stephanie has drafted something here because I haven't done so.
If I can, because I know that obviously Stephanie's new with drafting resolutions, so I'm just going to try to assist here as well. But I think if the resolution would indicate that the board authorizes the chief to negotiate and enter into an agreement with the Owen Sound Police Service for a 5-year contract to provide a hosted solution for NG 911, and that the chief will report back to the board prior to finalizing any agreement.
Okay, do a mover for that? Jen, seconded by Chris Babcock. Rob's got 2 hands up. Are you stretching? All in favor? That's carried. Okay, thank you, and thank you, Earl, for participating.
Thank you, and I'll certainly, as I said, I'll update the board even prior to the next meeting with the results of next week's meeting. Next week there'll be quite a bit on the table with the transfer payment agreement, the agreement with the ministry for the funding, and then our talks with Chief Ambrose as well.
Thank you. Okay, moving on in our agenda, we have item 9C, which is the resolution for the hiring of a new officer to replace the officer who is leaving at the end of May, new constable.
I think that should be D, Chair Panko. C was the grant up, just further grant updates.
Oh, sorry. Okay, go ahead with the grant updates first, please.
And just very quickly, and I just because it's always good, obviously with the NG 911 of getting that funding from the government. We have a number of other grants that we get as well. I know we've mentioned before the automated license plate reader grants and whatnot. We did just get as well our grant funding for our intelligence, our central intelligence services. We provide joint services with the province, and we have our own intelligence services here, and we get a grant fund that covers some of our expenses for the work that we do here locally, and that's in the amount of about $8,000. So that comes back to us, which is good, and offsets some of our costs in our criminal intelligence bureau. as well as we have our festive ride grant that now, and I perhaps shouldn't call it necessarily a festive ride grant. We're using it more throughout the year. We're allowed to use it throughout the year, and it's and that's an additional almost $9,000 that we use to conduct ride programs throughout the year. Obviously, more heavily weighted in the Christmas festive times, but through other festive occasions throughout the year that we can make sure that we have a presence out there as well. So those are two additional grants that I just wanted to update the board on that we have. So like I said, every little bit helps to offset some of the policing costs. So those are good. I have another one in new business that I'll just give an update on as well under the court.
Okay, so that's just any questions there for the chief? Okay, so that ends our this is arising from the previous minutes. So moving into new business. Yeah, court security grant, please.
Yeah, so the court security grant, and I believe Councillor McGuire had brought it to the town. It's kind of a unique grant. It's really not a lot as of late. That grant funding has sort of dropped down a lot, mostly through COVID, because but prior to COVID, we have very little court responsibilities here in Smith Falls. We used to have the court that ran quite a bit at the Chambers Street Plaza, if you recall. And so we had to provide security for that and prisoner transportation for that as well. So those costs significantly reduced when the courts there have not been active, and also since COVID. So those costs came down substantially. So obviously our grant funding was reduced substantially. So it's really only about $2,000 that offers offsets some of our court security responsibilities, dealing with our remand court that we host virtually in our building, and then some prisoner transportation that we do to the Perth's court. So it's I'm anticipating that it is going to go up a little bit as we come out of COVID and as our courts open up a little bit more. So there's more requirement for people to appear in person rather than virtually. However, having said that, the courts have certainly seen the advantages of allowing accused persons, especially that are in custody, in appearing virtually rather than having to be transported. So although the grant has reduced significantly, our costs have reduced significantly. So it's only about $2,000. And the reason I bring it up is because it's the province made the agreement with the municipalities to provide to ensure that they were going to continue to provide support, because the province always did prior to through the OPP prisoner transportation system. They still have that, but there was more responsibility put on to the municipalities. So the province had made a commitment to the municipalities that they would continue to assist in funding with that regard. So the agreement is actually with the municipality, with the funds then coming back into our budget. So it has to be signed off by council. So last year, I believe Councillor McGuire brought it to council, really just a formality of saying we have this funding, this is what it's for, and then it allows the mayor and the clerk to sign off on the agreement to accept the funds. We provide an annual report at our end as to how we've spent the money, and they provide us the funds from there. So I was in contact with Clerk Costello as far as whatever point in time Councillor McGuire would just or yourself, Mayor Panko, would just be a case of bringing it up through council to and I don't know if there's a possibility, because it's sort of an ongoing annual thing, whether it would be something to put in that there's an annual ability, because I understand, I didn't realize, I thought it was, but I understand it was done as a bylaw last March to accept those funds. I don't know if there's a way at council level to say this is something that's annual and that we just sign it. I think if the wording changed.
Maybe check with the clerk on that then.
Yeah, because I just don't think there's any need for the amount. It'd be different if it was some huge amount that required a larger explanation for, but it's really and as I said, it may go up a little bit, but I'm not anticipating it being a huge increase in funding.
Okay, thank you. And item B, Inspector of Police Inspections.
So for the inspector that is, if you recall, a number of years ago, we haven't had any in a few years, and certainly with COVID. But the what was the old ministry, now it's called the Inspector of Policing, used to conduct. It's a separate branch now of the Ministry of Solicitor General. It used to be all under the same ministry, and they would they go around the province. And more virtually now, but they go around the province and they'll select 3 or 4 policies or procedures of the boards or the police service, and audit those policies and procedures to make sure they're following the provincial templates and following the provincial requirements of adequate and effective policing. So they'll take those policies, they review them, they'll look at not just the policy itself to ensure that it meets the provincial requirements, but that it also that we're actually doing what we say we're going to do. So that process is supposed to be starting back up again. They've selected a few policies that they're going to be reaching out to police services. There's no schedule or date yet, but it's just to advise the board that and if you recall, at the end of those, they usually had a bit of a debrief, often with the chief and the chair of the board, to say, this is how you did on these policies. They provide recommendations if there's things that need to be tweaked in policies or things that we're maybe not meeting up to. We've had a good track record in the past with our policies and procedures, and so I don't anticipate any problems, but it's just to let the board know so that you're aware that those are going to continue, and it does it's a good thing, because it does ensure that police services, large or small, do meet all the provincial requirements for adequate and effective policing.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on. Now we'll move on to 9C, a resolution to hire a new constable to replace the one that's leaving the end of May. Chief, you want to speak to this?
Yeah, just require a resolution from the board. We discussed in camera with a member of the service that's resigning, and obviously our ongoing needs in recruiting, and so we're so I'm in my discussions with the board, looking for a resolution to fill that position. So it would just be a case of a resolution to indicate that the board gives the chief permission to continue with its recruiting process for the service to fill that vacant position. That'll be the vacancy will start May 31st. That being said, if we're able to fill the position beforehand, we do have a potential seat in early May for a position at the Ontario Police College. So we'd the hiring would, if possible, would take place in April.
Okay. Anybody want to move the motion? Chris Babcock, second by Rob. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Okay. Manager's report.
Good morning. I'm just going to share my screen. Can you see that okay?
Not yet.
Okay.
Speaking of next generation 911, the deputy's going into next generation PowerPoint for her manager's report.
Well, if I can get it. Okay, let's see here.
There we go.
How's that?
There we go.
Excellent.
Okay. So for February, we had 538 calls for service. We had 23 reported collisions, 34 complaints, 60 vehicle stops, and 37 charges related to those traffic stops. Under the Highway Traffic Act, there was a total of 53 charges laid. There was also 7 charges laid relating to the Compulsory Automobile Insurance Act. Our alcohol, drug, and criminal-related traffic stops. We had 1 charge relating to possession of a Schedule I substance, being cocaine, open alcohol in a vehicle. Our step target for the month of February related to intersection safety. So as a result of that, there was 5 stop signs, 4 failed to yield, 3 turn not in safety, 1 red light, and 1 amber light charges laid. Okay, foot patrol, we had 14 hours of foot. We had 14 hours of other community service in our community. During some of those times, our officers go to the Rank Community Center when there's events going on, or the mall, that kind of thing. School visits, we had 11 hours in the schools. For noteworthy calls for service, we had 5 assaults, 0 break-in enters, 9 bail violations, 9 intimate partner related calls, 9 warrants, and 42 mental health related calls with a 14% apprehension rate and 46-minute average wait time in hospital. Our crime unit officers conducted multiple fraud investigations, including this grandparent scam that we've been putting out to media, social media, as well as CTV News. We got an officer to do an interview with CTV. We know that not all of elderly people are online, so we're trying to hit as many as we can. We're coming up with a poster as well to circulate around to different businesses, doctors' offices, banks, that kind of thing, to put more awareness out in our community about this grandparent scam. It's across the province, as you might have seen in media, and it's not just focused on Smith Falls. So we're trying to do all we can to put it out there to explain to the public what this grandparent scam does and how it affects people. The officers also conducted DNA warrants and production orders, assisted in several of our arrest warrants, court, and assisted in uniform patrol for some staff shortages that we had in the month. And he's also continuing to prepare for the homicide trial that's coming in 2024 and assisting with our missing person investigation. So as well as that, in conjunction, our CISO officer is continuing with the missing person file and is working collaboratively with the OPP on that. Our community service officer attended an Indigenous Human Trafficking Conference in Ottawa. He found that quite interesting, and actually there was quite a few survivors at this conference in Ottawa that was presented by Ottawa Police. So it was a different perspective to see what's going on in their community and to gain some information to help us in ours. He conducted 14 school visits. He did 2 worrisome case conferences in the school. So that's almost like a threat assessment with behavior issues that are worse than some of the normal behaviors. So he does some conferences in the schools with principals to come up with some solutions on the child. He did an interview with Your TV. He organized a team for bowling for Big Brothers Big Sisters. Myself and the chief also participated in that, and we put in a team and raised some funds for Big Brothers. As you know, we did the polar plunge. It was a great success, raising close to $6,000 from our generous community. So that was a great event, and obviously something that we're going to do annually. We lucked out on the weather, obviously. He assisted on the road for 3 shifts. He did some meetings with Kinsman Club, the situation table. And just on note with Kinsman Club, I have to also say a big thank you to them. They really supported us with the polar plunge in allowing us to have their space and provided us with hot chocolate and coffee after. So we're very thankful to them and all they do for the community. He also did meetings with Situation Table, Crime Stoppers, and Lanark Youth Collaboration. He also did some child exploitation training and hate and crime bias training. So we're continuing on with our hate and crime bias campaign. That was all through February. And later this month and into next month, we're developing brochure and posters. We're working with the schools in getting a poster together with police and our youth and really promoting that hate and crime bias. It was actually interesting. I was speaking to the officer yesterday, and he had a meeting at the school, and it was actually nice to hear that some of the kids from our diverse community actually have a lot of support from our schools and don't feel that hate crime bias feeling. So it was kind of nice to get that perspective within the schools. So it is working and helping. For training for myself and other members, was involved in the Ontario Intimate Partner Violence Coordinators meeting. I also did a lunch and learn. It was called Beyond the Incident. It's a video that's actually interesting, and I'm happy to share with the board if they were interested in it. It's OPP did it with Lanark County Interval House. It is IPV related, but it's a perspective as well on a victim, and it's interesting. Some of us did the 2023 fitness pin, and we're also continuing with our online training regarding hate-related crimes and our trauma-informed training. And that is it for the manager's report.
Super. Thank you very much. And we love the new format. Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, that's it for our formal business. Date and time of next meeting. Just want to turn to Councilor McGuire to see if he's been able to get some clarity on his work schedule.
Yeah, so right now the Thursday mornings are tricky for me. Obviously I'm not working today, but on the weeks that I am working, the Thursday mornings are out for me for the near future.
Okay, so is there another morning of the week that does work for you? Mornings seem to work well with the rest of the board.
Maybe a Tuesday morning. That
How does that work for the board? We probably look at Tuesday, April 25th. Does that work for everyone? It's nodding heads all around.
Are we talking the same time then, Councilor McGuire?
if we could move it up to 8, that would be great. But yeah, it's just without the work from home is getting less flexible on my end, so that's where this is coming from.
Okay, I'm just going to turn to the member who's got some organizing to do every morning to get kids where they need to be. Jen, would 8 o'clock work for you? Is 8:30 better?
I can make 8 work.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
Tuesday, April 25th at 8 a.m. Okay, we're all set. Motion for adjournment. Moved by Chris Babcock, seconded by Jen. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks to everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, Chief.